You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Best Comics of the Week show. I am here, as always, with my man, Gray. What up, Gray?
What up, Jim? Are you ganky today?
You might be. You actually told me you're on some painkillers. I don't want to say that too loud. My wife will hear and come running out. I'm telling you, she that's what she can hear. She senses it and runs out, but you have a bit of a kink, and I don't mean that you like leather or something like that. You ended up straining something, and now you're taking painkillers, right?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a frozen neck, or I've trapped a nerve or something, Jim, but when I try and turn my head, I've got to turn my whole body at the same time. It's like a robot.
Yeah, a robot, because the guy I do the DC stuff with, Eric, he has a problem with this all the time, and he looks like Frankenstein. That's what I always think, because he just like walks, and when he turns, he has to make a full turn. It's almost like what you're doing is you have to walk around like you're in the original Resident Evil, where it's just that box type deal where you're walking around and nonsense. But
I'm old enough to remember that. Yeah, the PlayStation 1.
Maybe the only one that is able to remember that nowadays. I actually saw somebody with a tweet with the announcement for the original PlayStation, and the tweet was like, if anybody remembers this announcement, they're old. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm not responding to that. But yeah, here we are. And I would like to say that some of your selections might be influenced by these painkillers, possibly. But I don't think so. We have a rough week for the big two this week, but we do have a bunch of indie stuff. And you are my indie guy, so I will lean on you with some things. But you did suggest something about a month ago. And I did catch up, and I have to say that I am a big fan of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. When we get to that, I will probably yell at you, though, because that is a messed up book. That book is messed up, but it's really good. Oh, my goodness.
Amazing. Yeah.
Well, we're going to jump into this. Before we get into this, though, let me remind everybody that if we don't mention a book that you like, please mention it in the comments. It's not that we think it's bad or whatnot. It may just be that we haven't been reading it or we didn't get to it, whatnot. And I always like to say this show is all about giving people ideas of some things that they may not be reading or maybe dropped or whatnot. And that's how I go with the comments as well. And end up, like I said, Gray telling me to read that Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, probably going to give me nightmares for at least a week, but I did it and I loved it. But I don't know. I don't mind nightmares. I really don't dream that much. It's one of those things that I talk to people about. I don't dream much. And when people read stuff and say, oh, I heard, this person's voice, Kevin Conroy, when I'm it doesn't work for me. I've never heard that sort of thing. It's something that my mind just doesn't jive with.
You just hear your own voice, don't you, Jim? Come on, admit it.
I really, what I hear are my kids yelling downstairs and my wife yelling at me up here. So that's what I hear. But here we go. We're going to start with DC. Not a lot. I'm going to give you my choice. It was Justice Society of America #9, written by Jeff Johns with art by Michael Janine. And when this comes out, it's a surprise. I even say that when we're talking about on the podcast, and we have at the end of each show, hey, this is what comes up next. This is next week's show. I never want to say it because I never know if it's really coming out. My joke is until I have it in my hands, I'm not going to believe it's out. But it did come out. So you end up having it. Plus, a lot of people are against Jeff Johns, but boy, that Michael Yanine's art looks great, and it's a book that could have been huge if it was on time and if Jeff Johns wasn't leaving. He's going off to Ghost Machine. So what does happen at the end of the series? Nobody knows yet. It could continue. A lot of people want Venditti to continue it, maybe even Jeremy Adams, because they're doing both the Sandman and the Jay Garrick the Flash. But I don't know. I haven't heard anything, and I'm kind of getting the idea that my man Eric even said it's probably not selling great, and it'll get it's just a shame because in this issue, you set up a lot of things. First off, you have the Lost Children still that I love, and you play around with them. Plus, you have Huntress gathering up the Second Chance Legion team that she would have in her future, even though that has been kind of ruined with the timeline, but she wants to try to get that back again. But then you get the first Legionnaire, and you end up finding out that it's Mordru by the end. And he's actually coming for help, saying that I want help because I'm going to ruin the future, which he has messed up a lot of things in the future, especially with the Legion of Superheroes and him coming back. Like, this could have been something if it continued, really could have changed and reset the future of the DCU at least. But I don't think it's going to do anything because, unfortunately, I think it's just going to fade away because of Jeff Johns leaving and all that. But we could keep our fingers crossed. But boy, it felt big. The Michael Yanin art looks so good that it feels like an event. It really feels bigger than a lot of the other books, but it can't keep a schedule. Did you read it? Did you check it out?
I did, yeah, on yours and Eric's recommendation on the Spotlight. And I got to say, I've not been following it, so I was a little bit lost. But as you say, it felt big. It felt almost epic, and it looks glorious, Jim, doesn't it?
It does look. And you have even like the Lost Children. You have Quiz Kid, who is there with Mr. Terrific and talking about the original Mr. Terrific, and we should get a fair play club together, and we should do this. It's really fun. In it, you also have Harlequin's son that I did have some people, and Eric joked on the Spotlight up when we do it on our Patreon and said, I hope people don't think this is Harley Quinn's son. It's the character Harlequin's son. And there's a really awesome looking Hawkman in it, the way that Michael Yanin draws. It's just so good. You get an actual Power Girl that isn't punching star portals like she's American Chavez. Stuff like that. It's good. But it really felt big, and it's just a shame because as I'm talking about it with Eric, I had to keep saying, yeah, but it's probably not going to mean anything. Oh, man, it does push it down a bit, but I'm putting it here because I thought it was really good, and maybe it'll be something that will continue. I doubt it, though. From what I've heard, I think it's just going to die on the vine once Jeff Johns then leaves, and they'll just let it fade away because it does go against some other books and things like that, too. So it's a shame, but I really did like it, and I'm interested to see how it gets tied up, how it ends up ending. But you have a book, again, maybe the painkillers are talking here. You have a book I haven't been reading. A lot of people have been saying it is good. What is it there?
From DC, it's the one and only Hellblazer Dead in America, issue 3, from our favourite Cy Spurrier. I know, Jim, I was kind of like making a joke on the Slack and said, just look at this panel here. Can you even read this dialogue or this narrative box? I was lost in it, but that was just one-off. It's really, really well written. It gets a bit fancy, a bit highfalutin, as we said last time, but I'm loving seeing Swamp Thing taking his form from a peyote cactus. I mean, for a start, that is just so cool. And yeah, John Constantine, he feels like John, he's a dangerous man to know. Was it a nasty piece of work? A bit like me.
Yeah, really. Suggesting teddy bear stuff. You end up where the thing that I go, I haven't read it. I'm not a Cy Spurrier fan.
No.
I'm going to have to read The Flash next week. I almost can guess it won't be on this best of, because what Cy Spurrier seems to do is he has a certain way of writing, and it works for some characters, and it works for Hellblazer.
Exactly.
And people did love his first run of Hellblazer. Then they get back to this, and it actually is kind of a bonus, like a love letter to fans to actually allow it. That not as many people are reading it as some of the other bigger books, but the people who did like it and go, it is one of those things that DC did kind of hook you guys up by bringing it back. I never thought it was going to come back from the first deal, so that is cool, and I'm glad people are liking it. I can only take so much Cy Spurrier, and I get enough on The Flash, a book that I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you what's going on. My biggest problem with that. But again, I think that he connects more with John Constantine, and this is a book that he's been talking about on his Twitter since the last one. So it was something that he really was inspired to do and really liked doing. So you can tell when some people have those characters they're really good at, and it fits their deal. The weird thing about it is we talked about it this week on our regular DC Comics podcast, talking about what was coming up next week, and the idea that you do even have Cy Spurrier trying to use British slang with Wally and Jay. It doesn't work, but it certainly would work with Hellblazer. Yeah, it's weird. We're going to go off to Marvel. Marvel had a rough week. They had a lot of books, not a lot of good books.
There was a lot out, yeah.
This might be a surprise pick for some, and even the pick for me and you, it's almost 99% art. It is Star Wars Visions, Takashi Okazaki #1, written in art by Takashi Okazaki. And I wasn't really aware that he did Afro Samurai. You end up he did the Batman Ninja deal. I really liked Afro Samurai, so this really is pretty cool.
Great, yeah.
But when me and you both talked about this of what, and it's not one of those things, I do like to have at least one book from the big two, but if we don't, we don't. But I actually like this, even though the story kind of tying in with the, the TV show, I didn't really see that. I saw some clips. I didn't watch. So I was a little lost reading it the first time. Second time I was getting a little bit more, but it is just that story of a Ronin. You have the idea of, C-3PO, R2-D2, and the art's incredible. The art, that's why we picked it, right? I mean, it really
absolutely
looks good. And it's black and white. But this is where when some people say that certain art, and I don't mean Peach Momoko, I'm talking like some other things in the big two, and they're like, oh, that's like a Batman and Robin right now. Oh, that's manga-esque. No, it's not. When you look at this, it's what it is. And when you have the colored lightsabers, the red lightsaber, and the glow from it, it looks so cool. But yeah, anything to say about it?
No, just pretty much you summed it up really well. It was the Japanese name, of course, Takashi Okazaki, that pulled me in. From I didn't even know it was Afro Samurai, Jim, which I've heard of. But yeah, this art, it just blew me away. There's a story, as you say, nothing spectacular. I felt it felt a bit forced at time, like they were trying to put a New Hope's version of the story there, with the robots.
And that's kind of the deal it looks like. And what I thought was kind of fun was the idea where you had George Lucas going like with the Hidden Fortress, the movie, to kind of get the inspiration for R2-D2 and C-3PO. And
like that, didn't it?
He like folds it back in the deal. So I did like that. I thought that was
like a Kurosawa movie, a classic Yojimbo movie.
Yeah, exactly. It was really good. And so when you get to this, it's like the reverse, flip it, rub it down, like, Belle Biv DeVoe used to say. But when I read, it was the art. I mean, I'm telling you, the art was the draw, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're looking for some decent art, give it a shot.
And usually you won't hear us say that a best of, it's just for the art, but it is that good. It really is. It's that good. But we'll move on. Again, not much more to say about that. Marvel, you said they had some, a couple books that almost made it there for me, but not quite, and then a lot of stuff.
Not Spider-Boy, Jim? I thought you were number one fan of Spider-Boy.
I am. Spider-Boy would have made the list, but they played a game with the backup that just continued the front up and shouldn't have been. It should be cheaper. It actually got me upset. Of course, I read it after I read that debacle of Web of Spider-Man, which was a complete ripoff and really upset me. But then right after that, I read Spider-Boy. I'm like, I like the story. Okay, here we go. And here's the backup just continues the story. And the main story was only 18 pages. So it really threw me. It actually threw me almost. I still like it, but it was underneath what I would put for the best of. But we're going to go to indie books. And we're flying through this right now. I guess because the big two didn't have much. But we have a bunch of indie books. The first one, here you go. Here's the surprise, because you were making fun of me last week with your Ram V nonsense. Dawnrunner, #1 by Ram V is one of my picks for the best of the week. It's art by Evan Cagle, and it is Dark Horse. It is $4.99. It's a little oversized. I wish that it wasn't $4.99. It seems a little bit too much, but it ends up being a mecha type story. Ram V, it doesn't have the things that drive me nuts. There's not a ton of metaphors. It's not as fancy, but I hope that he develops everything more, because this is a kind of a bare bones type start to get you into this world of pretty much mecha versus kaiju. I said to you, you can pick a lot of different things, but what it reminded me a lot of Kaiju or Monster #8, the manga that I do like. You said you read the first volume and liked it as well, so that's cool. But that's what but it also has a bit of Pacific Rim. It has a bit of all those sort of things, even Avatar-esque things in a world where these mechas are used to fight these kaiju. Don't really know too much, because you're really centering on just this girl who's going to go, and she's the hot shot. She has the most kills. You see that it's been turned into a sport. All these things to then use an experimental mecha that she kind of mentions that her old mecha. She's like, man, I wish I was going out with my old mecha. We really bonded. We really know what's going on. And when she gets in this new one, you suddenly, by the end, the twist, or the Ram V twist here, is that all of a sudden she starts having visions of what possibly would have been the former pilot of this, but it's not even connected that much yet. It's this guy who ends up being, from the past, that this whole explosion and things that seem to happen when this first set up what this world is. It's still a mystery by the end. It's really good. I actually had a really good time reading it. It shocked me. I ended up where I was like, okay, Rampy, let's see what you got here. And I was like, oh, this is good. That's pretty good. Hopefully it continues. But right now, like I said, it's a weird thing. Usually you'll say, if you like this Western deal, you might like this manga. But if you do like Kaiju number 8, and a lot of people do, I think you can kind of go to this. And it doesn't feel like, oh, this is just ripping it off, but it has that feel to it. I thought it was really, really good. So that's now on my list.
Well, you sold me, Jim. I want to give it a try, give it a shot. I've heard the art is awesome. I do go on about art a lot. I come to comics, so I came originally from an art perspective. But is it pronounced Evan Kagel or Ivan Kagel?
I guess it's Evan Kagel.
People are raving about his art in the book.
Weren't there like Kegel exercises? Weren't that when you're doing exercises for your junk or something? I think that's what it was. Like connecting weights to your balls.
Exercises?
Yeah, it was like some weird. I remember my one buddy used to say that, like, got to do the Kegel exercises, but he meant like some weird stuff with his balls or something. I don't know. I never asked because it was a weird thing.
Where's the rim shot, Jim?
Somebody can tell me that. Yeah, really. I mean, seriously, on both ways. There you go. And I really do think that everybody should at least check that one out. Now we're going to go. Here we go. Here's where I hear a bunch of people, but you really tooting the horn of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. And I'm like, okay, well, Grace said it a couple times now. I'm going to go give it a shot. And I got all of them. Getting ready. The issue number 4 came out this week. So I'm reading the first one. And I'm like, this isn't what I thought. And then I'm reading the second. And by the time I get to this week's issue, I'm like, it's so good. But it is so different from what I ever thought it was going to be, from the cover, from anything I saw, to the point where I'm like, this is the most messed up book I've ever read in my life. You give them you gave me a description of what you think that, and it's perfect. It worked. And when you told me, I'm like, I don't know about that. And I jumped in, but what was it?
It's weird. And I don't really like, comparing it. It's like this and this, but basically imagine the furries and Dexter, mixed up. But that's basically what you get. And I've seen that in quite a few reviews, Jim. People are shouting out Dexter, saying it kind of wears its influence on its sleeve. But I think it's done it even better than that.
I think so too. And it's like the second season of Dexter, if you really want to be with the different serial killers and things like that.
Yeah.
But I was shocked. And in a good way. I'm telling you, not
it
many
looks so
things
cute,
I
isn't
get
it? Like,
shocked.
the covers, you look at it, you think, okay, this looks good, an anthropomorphic, animal-based story. Let's have a look inside. Holy crap, it's unbelievable when you get the turn, the twists, and they keep coming.
And they do keep coming. And even, and I read them all. I marathoned the 4, right? So I'm in the 4th issue, still thinking, man, look at the cute, I'm like, no. They're not that cute. They're killers. You have, at one point, the one character following the other into the city where he's abducting people and slicing their throats. I'm like, what the hell is going on in this? Oh, but it's so good. And it gets to the point. Now, I've mentioned at one point the Black Sad series, where it's like a noir with anthropomorphic with cats and things like that. When you know that it's such a weird concept of making the idea of, okay, I'm going to make them these cute anthropomorphic characters, because at a point you kind of forget that. You're just going with it, and they just are regular characters in a book. But maybe that's the play of, I'm going to write the story so
that's really good storytelling.
Straight.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's not like they're making jokes about this or
no.
And it and then there's certain scenes where then you oh God, they're just cutesy animals. Why are they doing this? And what's going on in this town that pretty much is just terrified at this point because all this bad stuff is going on? But this issue was good. It was really good, and it shocked me. And like I said, I was glad that you suggested it. It was shocking in a really cool way that I did not expect.
I've got to shout out Jim as well. I think we shouted him out last time, but it was thanks to YouTuber Fear Monarch who put me onto this. He kept saying, Greg, give it a try. This is probably one of the best books, the best indie books out there. And he wasn't joking.
No, it's Patrick Horvath, and it's IDW. And it's only $3.99. You can jump into this, and
IDW, that surprised me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I know. And
initially,
I know that they're having issues or whatnot, but boy, more people should know about it. More people should check it out, because it's if you just see the cover, you're just gonna kind of just walk by. You're gonna think it's a cutesy thing or whatnot, but it's it's the most mature book that I think I'm reading right now, then suddenly, and also just the darkest, but also just the best, because you start to get it again. You go with the idea of Dexter, but it works because, you have the deal that you're like rooting for certain characters that you normally wouldn't root for these characters. It's so weird.
Exactly.
It's so good. It's so
weird.
good. So I suggest but we have 2 books now that are all you. You can take it away because we have 2 Image comics that you have picked.
That's right. Initially, I was just going to shout out one, but let's do them both. It's Spawn, issue 351, and where are we? The Scorched, issue 27. Is that right? I think it is, off the top of my head. We've got John Layman, Jim, writing Scorched at the moment. The art is by Steven Segovia, and the art is really good, but for me, it's a good chance to kind of jump on if you've not been reading any of the Spawn universe titles. With Spawn as well, it's not like a relaunch, but it's starting a whole new storyline with each book, so perfect time. And I've mentioned the art before, but we've got Brett Booth on Spawn now, on the main Spawn title, and his art is just excellent.
Yeah. You want to know a crazy thing? I didn't even know Scorch was part of the Spawn books. That's how little I know.
I think it's the least popular of the 4. Yeah,
and and just to point out, they're $2.99.
Yes, exactly.
It is one of those. The problem, and like I did catch up on some of the things when you said. And I was worried, and now that you said that, it's kind of a good jumping on point, which people did say to me that after the Spawn 350, that a lot of the things would be a good jumping on point. I didn't actually realize it was a Spawn book, or I probably would have read it so that I could see if I liked it and talk with you. But when I saw that it was issue number 27, I kind of thought, well, it's weird to jump in on a 27.
I know, that's the problem, isn't it? Yeah.
So maybe I will check it out. Now, I don't know, because Sus Gabe only gave it an 8.8 on the comic roundup, so, it's not as good as Predator, maybe, but...
It's a good score, though.
Gabe's the only one who reviewed it, and there's only one user review.
I've noticed that on CBR, yeah.
It's called somebody, The Mighty Layman, so I think it might be John Layman reviewing his own book, maybe. I don't know, but... Gabe actually did like it, and you like it, so I'm gonna check it out.
Jim, Sully was raving about, not the Scorch, I don't know if you read that, but Spawn 351. He said he was so good, he made sure he got a physical copy. He might have even got 2, because there's a great variant cover by McFarlane.
Yeah, he actually got a hold of me and said, I'm about to tell Gray that I'm getting a physical copy. Some of you were gonna get jealous. He's like, I'm going to tell Gray I'm going to get this. I said, oh, he'll love that. Like,
yeah, delighted.
I love when Sully will tell me, like, oh my God, I got this. And then the next thing he sends me is like, Nightwing was the best issue ever. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll check out that Spawn. I don't know about that Nightwing. It was okay. Actually, Nightwing and Titans were almost, they just didn't get there. But yeah, again, we were going to review the Spawn deal. And when 350 came out, I ended up like, well, I started reading it. I was a little lost. So we held back, but I will probably check out 351 then. And I love Brett Booth's art. And again, you said you're a big art guy. I'm not. I'm usually a character and a story guy first. Yeah. And a lot of times I have to even, remind myself, oh, we got to talk about the art. But this week was really art based at a lot of things, from the visions and even, this, like you said. And most people that I heard talk about Spawn, it was just Brett Broussard, him jumping on to the main title. And he's awesome. He's one of my favorite artists. I just kind of lose track of him because we do so much of the big 2. And he's doing Spawn stuff and doing other stuff as well. But I know that when Brett Booth draws, there's always dinosaurs soon to follow. So
he loves them, yeah. He'll be on Shazam next.
Yeah, that he should be. You can have the space dinosaurs going. It'd be awesome, though. I do like to have more as well, but I do like Brett Booth a lot. But those are your 2 shout-outs to leave one book left. And it's probably... Here's the thing. I say this each time there's an Energon book out that we usually say, well, this is... If you're playing at home, you'll probably figure it out. Cobra Commander's an odd one. And me and you both don't have as much a connection with the G.I. Joe stuff. But even the connection we have, it gets a little less with Cobra Commander than, say, a Duke. So it's Cobra Commander number 3. And you even said, like, you were kind of teetering on the idea, and I was too. Actually, I started reading it, and at first I was like, okay, I know the Dreadnoks. It's the funniest thing is those are the characters I do know from the Transformers G.I. Joe crossover from back in the day. We ended up doing that for a podcast, and the Dreadnoks were in that. So I'm like, the little I know, But I end up reading this, and at first I thought, yeah, it's not really hitting with me. Then about halfway through, once you have Cobra Commander, because he's captured by the Dreadnoks, once he starts messing with their heads, but then they start to kind of torture them, and they go back and forth. And at the one point, you even have that smiley face on the mask, which was eerie the way it was.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. And so as it kept out, like it was building and building for me, again, mainly because I don't really know the characters. I'm not real familiar with Cobra Law stuff. So even as they're saying like Globulus, mentioning but it wasn't really, and then it did hit for me. And then at the end, the funny thing, and by the way, it is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Andrea Molina and Annalisa Leone. At the end, I asked you, because at the end you have a big giant cliffhanger. I'm like, all right, I don't know who that is. So I had to go look, and I'm like looking up, and I'm like, okay, I see who it is. But again, I think this would definitely hit better and harder for people who are more in the know than I am. Sure. But I still liked it. By the end, I thought it was really, badass how, I mean, you see Cobra Commander in that mask. You can't even see his face. He's tied up. He's there. And he still was able to manipulate the Dreadnoks at points. Then they start fighting each other. But they still, not all of them, it's still a threat. So it felt more real than him just like, oh, you this and that. And then the next thing, all hell breaks loose. But it did end up. And then at the end with this Nemesis Enforcer coming out, it was pretty big. I saw it was big. Again, I was like, okay, there it is. I look it up. Okay. But yeah, the whole point of Cobra Law and Globulus seems to be hitting. And the whole play is they have Energon, the thing that is, pretty scarce. So they have that cube and everybody's kind of coming for it.
That's a connection, isn't it?
Yeah. And so even the twist of who, this Nemesis Enforcer was disguised, it was kind of cool in that. But I will tell you, I said before we started with you, I ended up, when we had talked about one of the books last time, where I said, oh, here's my rank of the Energon stuff. I like Transformers first, Duke second, and then Cobra Commander third. And a bunch of people then pointed out, what about Void Rivals? That's part of it as well. And I'm like, you know what? I actually forgot a bit about Void, and I had fallen a bit behind on Void Rivals. To me, it was a lot of the hype of getting the Transformers, and then once those started. So I did catch up on it and really liked it, especially what led up to the last couple issues. And I do think that is leapfrog Cobra Commander, mainly because I just don't have as much connection. I think as we go, I'll like Cobra Commander even more. But right now, you are doing some things that are a little above my head with my, my pay grade. And Void Rivals has been pretty good. So I think this is my fourth of the four, but that's still good. It's still on the best of the week. It just made it. I mean, I hate to say it, but the next issue has to step it up a bit for me, or it may slip out of the deal. And if people ask, the G.I. Joe, the Larry Hama, Real American Hero, I liked this issue this week. I didn't like it enough. There was a lot of exposition. And again, I think it was another issue that would be more for longtime fans than somebody just jumping in like the last 4 months or so. So I think that was one of those. And personally, it's just below making the list. Anything else for you?
No, that's it, Jim. Yeah, sorry. I'm the same with you. I enjoyed it, but for me, the plot didn't really go that far in this issue. I love the manipulation scenes. That was the best part about it, as you say, because I thought he'd had it. It's like, he's going to get tortured here. He's dead, but no, he was very, very clever and wound his way out of it.
Yeah, and he knew some stuff and used that, twist and turn. So, like you said, though, the plot was really Cobra Commander captured by the Dreadnoks, and they're going to torture him, but then he manipulates him to then get to the end with a big fight with Nemesis Enforcer. So, yeah, the whole overall, not quite like, say, the last issue of Transformers. When
oh my goodness, no.
One of the best. So, yeah, and even the Duke stuff, like, those more of the wow factor. And then when I get to Cobra Commander, I'm still it feels like I'm still trying to catch up with the Cobra Law stuff and things like that. But yeah, that's about it. And again, there were some other issues out, obviously. And if you like some that we didn't mention, Big Two, Indie, whatnot, just let us know. Let us know what they are, because I'm always into checking out some things. We'll give you a shout out, all that stuff going down. And then after we do this, I always say tomorrow, Sunday night, I do what I'm looking forward to in the upcoming week. So I'll be doing that. It's funny to think of like okay, I said all these issues, and did I actually like them? And it kind of was some of the things that I mentioned that I thought, and some surprises. Like I said, I never would have thought Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees was that good. It's so good. That's probably my pick of the week. If we had a pick of the week, to have somebody like, you got to check it out. But it's easy enough to go through if you haven't started,
me too,
if you haven't read it. Yeah, so it was so good. But thanks once again, Gray, for joining me. Everybody check out Wakazashi's Tea House, Gray's channel. It'll be in the show notes. You can check that out. But everybody, that is it. I hope that everybody found some comics to like this week. And we'll talk to you later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.